Mimi Kalinda, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning from what looks like quite a cold Johannesburg. You run Africa Communications Group and created the organization as well, and support an international client base that wants to get into the African market. But of course, Africa isn't one market, it's a collection of markets and cultures and wealth inequality. Tell us a little bit more about what Africa is. What's the modern Africa?
Very difficult question to answer, Jeff, because you're absolutely right. We're talking about 54 different countries that have very diverse cultures, traditions, history, people, political systems, economic systems, social dynamics. So when we talk about Africa and the African market, it's something that's quite difficult and complex to quantify. But I think modern Africa is a continent that is rediscovering itself in a way, really thinking about, what are the things that matter to us that we have in common. First of all, what are the similarities, the things that we can leverage as a continent vis-a-vis the rest of the world, but also the differences that we have are assets. I think that, looking at Nigeria, its natural resources, the size of its population, for example, versus a Rwanda, which is a much smaller country, definitely landlocked country, and with a very popular history, which I'm sure everybody knows. Those two are different markets, but then how can we use those differences to really position Africa when it comes to the rest of the world as a continent that's worth investing in, visiting, and really building a relationship with? I think for me, that is modern Africa.
Yeah, and the African market and some of the diversity you referred to is it's difficult to grapple with. A lot of people have a kind of mental block when it comes to Africa. It's too difficult, or there's kind of weird or governments, or maybe civil strife and disorder, and then other countries that are very well organized and seeing quite high levels of economic growth. Do your clients tend to view it as one subcontinent, or do they view it as a myriad of just too worrisome to bother with?
Definitely not too worrisome to bother with. And I think that, Africa is the next frontier. So I think that, the rest of the world really can't afford to ignore Africa and what it has to offer, the opportunities that are on the continent. Of course, like I said before, very complex. Some economies much more developed than others, political systems that are much more developed than others. But I think overall, the exciting thing is that where we stand now, the rest of the world is taking notice of Africa not just as a place of exploitation. If you read our history, that's quite clear, but also a partner. A development partner, a business partner, a place where technology is booming. And also, don't forget, we have the youngest population in the world. As I often say, this population can be an asset or a liability. And if it turned out that this population was indeed a liability, it wouldn't be just a liability on the continent, but on the rest of the world. So I think we all have an interest in really taking Africa very seriously and investing in the continent to see it grow to its next level.
Which nations in particular are seeing the most economic growth? Which are the most dynamic economies, and that are likely to see the, because obviously it tends to be, growth tends to go like that, and then off the scale.
Yeah.
Which economies are at that tipping point of huge economic improvement?
I think that I think it's varied if you look at the past decade, but I think the constant ones have been South Africa, where I live, Nigeria, one of the biggest economies on the continent, Kenya, Egypt has been a solid growth economy, and then we have countries like Ghana that are really emerging economies and are coming up as economies to be reckoned with, and then smaller countries as well, like Rwanda, which has surprised us over the last couple of years in terms of how much investment has gone into innovation, technology, AI, and really aligning its development agenda to the fourth industrial revolution.
Now, if you look at technology, a lot of obviously nation or companies regard Africa as a significant economic development opportunity. In other words, to peddle their products into Africa. As the wealth increases, therefore the opportunities to sell product increases. But the counter of that, of course, is that as wealth increases, the propensity towards creation of businesses, indigenous businesses, improves as well. Are you seeing a kind of wave of entrepreneurship in those nations that you mentioned too? So are we seeing the creation of indigenous tech businesses?
Yes, and you're right. I mean, one of the I was reading a report just yesterday that came out from one of our biggest banks here on the continent, and it spoke about the biggest drivers of economic growth, and entrepreneurship is right at the top. And formal entrepreneurship, but also the informal sector, which is quite big in Africa. So I think that there are a lot more programs that promote entrepreneurship. I think technology, entrepreneurship in the field of technology is something that has taken, a huge proportion in terms of driving economic growth. I think, about 50%, we had a growth of more than 50% when it came to tech hubs on the continent. And what's great as well, I was just thinking about CC Hub, for example, in Nigeria, which is one of the biggest technology hubs in that country. Also getting out of its own borders, opening up in Kigali, in Rwanda, technology hubs in South Africa, buying into Kenya. So you're seeing that cross-pollination of entrepreneurship, specifically in the technology sector, which is very, very encouraging as well.
Interesting. Maybe I'm just going to stop you at that point. Richard,